I'll be explaining how you can track the enemy jungler by looking at his CS and also his buff duration. So starting with the very basics, when you complete a jungle camp, you get 4 farm or 4 CS, as I'll be referring it across this video. So you get 4 farm for fully completing raptors, wolves, red, everything. Because Gromp, red and blue are single camps, you can't really counter jungle them and get less than 4. You always get 4. But on wolves, raptors and golems, it ends up being a bit different. So on wolves, for example, if you kill the big one, you get 2 farm, and then for each small one you get 1. So if you were to go into the enemy jungle and you get the big one and 1 small one, you end up getting 3. This is important because you get to know information if the enemy jungler invaded and took your camps or not, if you know this kind of stuff. So it's a bit niche, but it's definitely important to some extent. On raptors, for example, if you kill the big one, you get 2, and then if you kill every single one except the last one, you get +1, so which gives to 3. And then if you only kill the big one, you only get 2, so also important to note. And then on the Krugs one, the Krugs is definitely the weirdest one, but the one thing that you need to know is that when counter jungling, they won't spawn if the medium one gets left behind and you kill the big one. By killing the big one, you get +1 CS, and that's sometimes really important because you can see, for example, like the enemy jungler coming from your jungle. He goes across and then he tries to gank bot or something, or he shows up on the scuttle that he took, something like that. If you see that he has like 25 farm when he came from his jungle, it's very likely that he went from his jungle to your jungle and then he took the Krugs, or he cleared a ward. You also need to be looking for that stuff because wards are also worth 1 farm. So using this kind of information, we can deduct a lot of stuff. So I'll be using an example from the C9 versus TSM game. The first example is here. We get Biofrost ends up meeting with Blabber, and he sees his farm, so he sees that he has 20, and he's on bot side right now. Another thing you can do is you can look at the buff duration and see which buff has the lesser duration, because right now Blabber has both blue and red buff. So if Biofrost clicked on Blabber, you can see that the red buff has a shorter duration than the blue buff, so that means that he started on red. So with this information, you can do a lot of assumptions. So first assumption is that he did red, he went to Krugs, from Krugs he went to Raptors, from Raptors you went to Wolves, and from Wolves you went to blue. So this one could make sense because he started on red, so that part matches up. Red gives you 4 CS, Krugs gives you 8, Raptors 12, Wolf 16, and Blue 20. So it makes sense because it started on the right buff, and he gets the same the amount of CS that's being shown. Now the reason why this clear isn't correct is because Blabber is currently on the bot side. So if you were to do this, you'd have to do this whole clear, you'd have to go there, do wolves, do blue, and then you'd have to go all the way around to bot without backing, which is usually really unusual. And you know that he hasn't backed because first his mana and his HP, and then of course he didn't buy any items. So you know that this clear is very likely not what Blabber did. So going into the next hypothesis, you started red, you went Raptors, you went Wolves, blue, and then Gromp. My handwriting is so bad. Okay, so this one could also be true because he gets the CS gets to make sense, but this one is also unlikely. The reason this one is unlikely is because again he's on bot side. He shouldn't really be bot side here, especially this early into the game. If you did a clear like this, it would usually take a bit longer. But the main reason, it's not even the time that the game is. It just he didn't buy his HPs like this. It wouldn't make much sense if you do red into Raptors and then you go full blue side clear, and then you don't back or you don't go for the scuttle or something like that. So this one doesn't make a lot of sense. Unlikely to be the case. It could be. Sometimes it will be. But it's probably not what happened. So this leaves us with a last hypothesis where he does red. He goes into wolves, blue, gromp, and then he goes raptors. Now this one is probably the one that makes the most sense. You start red, you go into the blue side, you clear the whole blue side, you get the 20 CS that we're seeing, and there's a good reason for you to be bot side, because you just cleared raptors and you're probably going into scuttle right now. So this is likely what happened this game, and that's probably what TSM is thinking if they know how to count CS properly, which I'm sure they do. So with this information, you know two things. You know that Kindred started red, which isn't super important, and you know that their blue side is fully cleared. And by knowing this, you know that it's very likely that what's going to happen is that Kindred, when she bases, she's going to go blue side instead of red side, because the red side is still yet to be cleared and the blue side is going to respawn faster. Another thing you can take away from this is that there's no reason for Kindred to go blue side right now. So if, for example, Graves wanted to get priority mid through a gank or just pushing the wave, go into scuttle with TF's help and then go all around and get both scuttles, he could do that, for example. Going into the next example, Speak ends up being shown up on mid. He shows up himself, obviously. He's going for the scuttle, as you can see. And something that Nisqy can do now, he can just click on Graves, you can see the buff duration. And if he clicks on Graves, you'll know that blue buff has a shorter duration, which means it was done first. So he can go into a lot of hypotheses right now. So we're gonna do the same thing we did with Clever. He started on blue for sure. From blue, he could have gone blue, wolves, raptors. He has 20 CS, important to note. Could have gone blue, wolves, raptors, Krugs, or red. Krugs. And this would give you 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. So this could be a possibility right now. You know that it's unlikely that this is the case. Well, this is completely possible. You know that it's not very likely that this is the case for a couple reasons. Krugs early on aren't super valuable and they take way too long to kill. They also don't scale as well as Gromp, for example, so if you're starting blue, you usually wouldn't skip Gromp. So it's unlikely that this is what happened. And it's also, if you know Graves jungle clears really well, you'd probably know that he can't be a mid at this time if he did a route like this. Not actually sure if that's real, if that's an actual thing, because I think he can actually do it. It would just be really weird that you wouldn't come, like usually it'd come from here, but there's also the possibility that he went around and then used his Z over, so this is definitely possible. It's just unlikely because Gromp is more valuable than Krugs usually. So this leaves us with a few more hypotheses. So for example, he could have gone blue, could have gone Gromp, could have gone wolf, so full blue side clear. Then he could have gone red, then raptors, or the other way around, doesn't really matter. And this is the same thing, 4, 8, 12, 16, and 20. So this one is also very likely. Both of these hypotheses are strong, and they have a bit of a different. They're a bit different. So another reason why the first one is usually not ideal is because by starting blue side and not full clearing, and by clearing one of the camps, you make your recall really weird. So if you did blue into wolves, into red, Krugs, raptors, or whatever, it would make your recall really weird, because by the time you recall, your Krugs haven't respawned yet, and you'd have to go bot. Usually you'd have to go blue side, but Gromp is level 1, which is really weird. So this is probably not what he wants. The bottom option is probably is really strong. You full clear blue side, you go into red, you get what you want, you then cross mid for Crab, you recall, and then by the time you come back, Gromp is level 3 because it just respawned. You can clear wolves, you can again clear raptors, and then you kill Krugs for the first time. That's also a very strong option, which is probably the more likely and the stronger option between the two. So it's very likely that what Spica did this game is probably this clear or something similar, where he full clears blue side and then he goes red side and he crosses river. Now Spica is spotted again on bot. He ends up going for the clear that we hypothesized as the most likely, and we can see that he has 36 CS, and before he was at 20. Let me change colors actually. Okay, so before he was at 20, as we saw, we know that he did Scuttle. So Scuttle, okay. Scuttle puts him at 24, and then because he knows that Kindred was bot side and that our blue side was taken by herself, there's no reason for her to come up, so he can actually just cross river and go for the top side Scuttle, which he ends up doing. C9 also saw that, so they know that he got the other Scuttle, so is at 28 when he bases. Oh shit, what is that 8? Okay, he's at 28. And now he just came from bot side, which makes a lot of sense because he full cleared blue side first. So what this means is usually that he did Gromp into wolves, or the other way around. Usually you always want to clear you always want to clear Krugs or Gromp first, because it makes clearing a lot more efficient. You go from the outside into the inside, makes it a lot smoother. So Gromp is 32, wolves is 36, and that's how we arrive at this CS. So this is really important because you get to know what's Graves' next movements, because from the moment you saw him mid, you know that he has to recall and come bot afterwards. So the only chance that he has to gank top is when he goes and gets the Scuttle, and then he doesn't really have any other chance. That's really important information for our laners and even junglers. We get to see Spica again on top. There's a control ward here that he got spotted, and you may notice that it's a bit weird that he's at 46 CS, and that's because so let's see, he was at 36 before. He cleared his raptors and he cleared his Krugs. So raptors clears raptors, goes into 40, and then he clears, oh, it's 40. Okay, he clears Krugs and he goes into 44. But that doesn't make a lot of sense because he has 46. So we're missing something here, and what we're missing is what I was mentioning before. Spica was seen in the last image. He was seen coming into the river, and what he ends up doing is he is going to counter jungle Blabber, so he ends up taking the raptors. He only takes the big one, and as we saw before, the big one only gives you 2 CS. So what ends up happening is that he goes from 36 to 38, and then 38, 42, 42, 46. And Blabber in this instance where the Graves get spotted, he obviously already knows, because he just cleared the raptor camp. But in other situations, maybe you're doing your top side and there wasn't a ward to spot him coming from here, but there's a ward that your Galio just put here or something like that. Or like he does a weird camp, a weird route where he goes for your raptors into your Krugs, and then there's like a control ward on your Tribush on bot or something like that. If you get to see a CS, you can know that your bot side is taken, even without, like obviously if he's coming from your bot side, it's very likely that it's taken, but you can see if he counter jungled, if you have any reason to go bot side after the recall, because if for example if you're clearing blue side and you see that the Graves counter jungled your bot side or your red side in this scenario, it's in some scenarios if you leave like the big small raptor or something like that, a lot of the times you want to just go bot and clear that, or you want to ask your mid laner or something like that. But if you see that if suddenly you had like 48 CS or 50 because it did raptors and krugs, hypothetically obviously, then there's actually no reason to ever go bot and you just go top again and you invade the jungle, do whatever you can, obviously. So it's important to have this kind of information in mind when counting CS, because it can lead into a different pathing. I think that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching.